Welcome back to What Have You. I'm Rachel Jankovic.
I'm Becca Merkel.
And it's November. The end.
It is that.
The end of November.
The end is near in many regards.
It's so true. It's a time of year when all the here it comes starts really building up.
I know. Now, guys, I'm just going to explain right now the background noise, which is that Rachel and I are driving to McDonald's.
We failed to get a Diet Coke already. And if you're in a place that's not actually like here, I guess it's not happening everywhere in the world. But at our McDonald's, a large fountain drink is $1.
Yeah.
But I don't have money. Do you have money?
I'll support you.
Oh.
Yeah.
Anyways.
You can owe me.
Here, I'll hold it.
Yeah,
you
thanks.
drive and I'll hold
right.
the dang phone.
Anyways, we're
This
driving
way
there.
It would be easier.
Oh, well. Wow.
Yeah. Ooh. So that's what we're up to. We're gearing up for the holidays that we spoke of last time.
Yeah, we are.
We canceled a whole episode in between. I can't remember what we did, but it was no good. Sometimes we do a no good job.
Oh, we did.
We did a whole episode.
We did an episode.
That was the worst.
It was terrible, you guys.
Worst.
It was not funny.
So, okay, but like life, I feel like it's just continuing on at its incredible pace.
At a clip.
You know, one of my favorite gifs is that lady running down the stairs that turns into falling down the stairs, but she's somehow falling still on her feet. Like she runs the whole way down the stairs falling.
How have I not seen this
at the very bottom, I feel like she just belly flops and throws her purse, and it's amazing. That's kind of like November through December. It's
a little bit.
It's not exactly a controlled fall. It's just that you're trying to keep it from being full on somersaults.
Or free fall, you know.
Yeah, you're looking for something more like a little bit of a paced wipeout.
Yeah, where your head's just going ever so slightly ahead of your feet at a higher rate of speed than your feet are.
Yeah, but that's the season that we're embarking upon. And we're embarking strong on it.
We are doing that.
Going.
But we have all of next week off for Thanksgiving, and that'll be exciting. I'm hoping to get much done in the world.
I'm working on an all-new chore system.
Me too.
Which is actually quite overdue in my life because we moved. Well, because we moved into our house at the beginning of September and nothing is normal. It takes quite a while to settle into sort of having a normal time.
Yeah, totally.
But the other part of the problem is that you kind of get
seat heaters on.
I like the seat heater. I just don't like all the hot air that's happening. So, anyways, the thing that happens in this time is that it takes quite a while to get to the baseline to try to maintain at the baseline. It's just so much.
Yeah.
And because we've been doing more hospitality than ever before.
Yep.
Or just not more, but a different scale of hospitality, I suppose.
Yeah.
Which, guys, big news for all of you who are out there in the world of the soup nights, which there are a lot of you now doing.
Yeah. What's the big news?
Well, this is big news to me.
Okay.
So maybe the rest of you won't care like I care, but I feel when we were shopping for a stove for our new house, that was a more complicated question than I had initially imagined it could be.
Okay.
Because I wanted a 60-inch range, which is huge, but because I wanted 2 ovens under it. But when we actually went and looked at them, even these huge, Wolf ranges had really small ovens. The full-sized ovens were not big ovens.
Okay.
Which is a letdown.
Okay.
Because, as it turns out, I don't need ovens that can accommodate, 18 different side dishes. I generally need something that can take a lot of potatoes at one time to roast, or a lot. Sure. It's not like I don't have, you know what I mean? It's like the concern of my life is volume, not whatever. So
variety.
We ended up with a range that is only 48 inches, but the big oven can take a full-size sheet pan. So it's, all this is to say, the feature that I didn't know that I was looking for, that I'm super stoked about now,
Ready.
And then any of you who are shopping for ovens, let it be known now that this is a thing you care about, is that it has a really, really good simmer burner. Like, it's made, the range top is made for large pots, like large items. And it does a really good simmer feature, which means that when I have served, like when we have a soup night or whatever, there can be like a pot with chili in it on the stove for like a couple hours on simmer without me stirring it, and nothing happens to it. It just stays hot. It doesn't do any disasters.
Okay, tell me this though, because last night was soup night, so I was contemplating this very question that you have brought up. I love my stovetop because it has the power burner in the middle, which I really like the ability, especially with a big soup pot, to get something up to a boil.
I think mine claims that they're all power burners. Okay. I don't know.
Well, mine is, I don't know that it gets hotter, but it's big. So it just, it can handle a big pot.
That's actually the one thing. If you were wanting to put a saucepan that is like a mini saucepan on my stove, it doesn't really know where to put that. I think you'd have to put it on the griddle.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I'm having a question about is last night I did chicken tikka over rice. Oh my gosh, you know what happened? This is annoying. Then I'll come back to my thought, but I have to tell you this. Everyone, Rachel and I both have jumbo rice cookers. And if you need to cook a lot of rice for a lot of people.
They're restaurant rice cookers. So it's 60 rice cups.
60 rice cups, which is enough for a large
Which is really
crowd.
dumb, because I think a rice cup is 3/4 cup. So why don't they just tell us what size it really means? But
anyway, it's real big, and it's really handy to have one of those around, because sometimes you need to make a ton of rice. Anyway,
I successfully boiled whole potatoes for your fall
you did.
thing.
That's right.
Yeah.
But anyway, if you need a huge rice cooker, just know that they're out there. Anyway,
be aware.
And look on Amazon, and there you'll have it. But the point is that I have this jumbo rice cooker, and I was making like 24 cups of rice. And
dry rice?
Yeah, 24 cups dry.
Okay.
And so 48 cups or however much that is. Anyway, I got it all in there, and I plugged it in, and I turned it on. And then about 6 minutes before the hungry horde of college students showed up at my house, and I was ahead of schedule on everything. Like, the bread was done, the chicken tikka was done.
That was your first clue that something was wrong.
Everything was building up to be ominous, because I had gone out and I'd felt it, and it was on, it was hot, things are good. And then, it turned out I had turned it on to warm. No. And so it had absorbed all the water into the rice, so it had fluffed up and it had gotten hot, but it was still raw. It was just crumbly bad. I threw it all away and I started over because I didn't know what.
It's pretty quick, that rice cooker.
I thought it was going to be like an hour, but it was only about half an hour.
Yeah,
and it was ready to go. So I told everybody to just hang in there, and it turned out that in their lordship class they had been discussing fasting, so it was very on point.
They were we can be our wits are sharpened for this discussion.
So anyway, but my point is I was making this chicken tikka to go over the top of the rice, and I was noticing how some of my soup recipes are the kind where you can just let it simmer and you're fine. You can walk away and all is well. And then other ones really want to scorch to the bottom, and you have to really babysit it by stirring all the way to the bottom. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So this is my question that I'm bringing up, and that was a long segue. But how do you have a simmer burner that with certain kinds of textures of soup isn't still going to want to, if there's cheese in it, for
instance,
it's
just if it's low enough, because I think that my burner can go so low that it's like a chafing dish.
Like, you think so?
But the other thing that it does is because it goes for large cookware, because all of the burners are for large cookware, they heat up, like on my really big pot that's 8 gallons that I use.
Is yours 8? We determined, everyone. Mine's only
I
6.
checked. Mine is 8 gallons.
Yeah, mine's only 6.
But now I have a 6-gallon one, too.
Rachel wins.
My 8-gallon one blesses me a lot. I have been using it more than...
Where'd you get it?
At the restaurant supply. But the way my burners work it's a big pot because it's 8 gallons. But even when it's really boiling or whatever, the burners are putting the heat out on the sides. Like the sides of the pan are super hot. Like it's not that center bottom scorch.
Yeah.
So the heat, I think it's just the heat distribution is not a scorching one.
Because see, I always keep my pot on the center power burner. I wonder if I should try.
You probably should turn it down.
I turn it all the way down, but I wonder if I have a little baby simmer burner. I should try putting my big pot on it.
That's probably a lower.
And see what it has to say for itself if I do that. Okay. Hold that.
I wonder what they're advertising here with the cinnamon sips. Oh my! I just know. We don't want that.
Welcome to McDonald's. I can take your order whenever you're ready.
Yeah, could we get 2 large Diet Cokes, please?
Sure thing. 2 large Diet Cokes.
Yep.
Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
All right, that'll be $2.12 for you as a person.
Sometimes Beck and I really like to treat ourselves. $2.
Self-care.
$2.12 for a little Diet Coke in the afternoon.
Yes.
And Becca has to treat me to it.
I have to rummage for my $2. There it is.
There it is.
There it is.
Oh. Well,
I like that we're bringing everyone with us.
I know. Okay, so what I was gonna say is that because I have this big pot, and because I've been feeding big groups.
Thank you.
One thing I have been doing that is really going off campus, as far as I know, has been cooking things that I wouldn't have thought of as being a pot endeavor. So you weren't at Sabbath this last week, but I cooked a bunch of pork roasts in the pot.
Oh, on the stovetop?
On the stovetop.
Okay, that was random.
I was like, forget pot roast. Let's try a pot full of roasts. This is not a singular pot roast.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks.
All right, thanks a bunch. Yeah, we know him.
You know what, though?
What?
It's reminding me of a moment where I was with another girl that we both thought the guy ahead of us in Starbucks was a youth from our church. And after a little while of awkwardly standing near him, I was like, hey, how's it going? But of course I used his name. And he just looked at us blankly. I am not. But we both thought it was him. And it was the same youth that we did just see for reals, which is why I stalled out with like, I can't be sure. I can't greet you. I can't. Yeah.
That's really
Anyways, all this is to say that my point is that if you can maintain a low simmer, you can duplicate the effects of something being in the oven for a long time.
Do you have to have a lot of liquid in there?
Well,
or do you just...
I mean, I wasn't trying to do like a dry roast in the pot.
Throwing me a little.
No, okay, I made pork roast and it worked out. And I can't say that this is wise, but I can say that it panned out. I wish that Winco had more leeks in stock. It would have made it better because I bought all their leeks. And then it was about half the leeks that I wanted. But I did pork sirloin roast that I covered in herbs, herb de Provence.
Okay.
You know, those.
Yeah.
And salt and pepper. And I seared them. I cut them into smaller little roasts, like little softball size roasts.
Okay.
Smaller than that.
Okay.
Bigger than baseballs, smaller than softballs.
Okay.
And then I seared them all in the pan.
Okay.
To get some good flavor, which is another reason I love my 8-gallon pot, because you can sear things to your heart's content and it's all the way down at the bottom of a tunnel and it doesn't splatter everywhere.
Yeah.
And anyways, I seared all of those. Then I put a ton of leeks in there, but about half is what I should have put in there. And then quite a bit of that Bragg's apple cider vinegar and Dijon.
Okay. All right.
And then garlic and chicken broth. And then I put all of the roasts back in it and simmered it on low for like hours.
Okay.
and they were delicious.
Well, how'd you serve it? Sliced or did you shred
No,
it?
it was very shreddy. I pulled it out and kind of broke the smaller roasts open, and then I thickened the sauce. I would have used like flour, like a thing that has been working for me is to thicken it in a separate saucepan to do a roux, like butter and flour, and then add the broth from the pot and make like a really thick gravy in a pot, and then dump into the broth. But we had a couple people who couldn't have gluten, so I did cornstarch slurry instead because I couldn't do the flour. But I would have done the flour otherwise. But it actually really worked well, and like the leeks plus the apple cider vinegar almost made a weird, that was a great combination. I don't know, I thought it was better when I made it at home, improvising with more leeks than when I fed 50 people that, but whatever.
Well, I did this chicken tikka last night, and I had made the sauce, and then I don't know if it deserves the name chicken tikka, because it's very much my own strange procedurals that I do with this, because for soup night, my requirements are that at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I might not have the groceries into the house yet, and I can still pull it off by 6, which means that proper and beautiful
what
cooking.
It means is that you're not in this business for the technique championship of the world.
There is no homemade broth in my life at this point.
I'd just like to give a little shout out right now to Better Than Bouillon, because I can't tell you how many times I look at it and I'm like, I think I added about 2.5 gallons of water to that, and that should pan out to being about 1.5 tubs of this.
See, the thing is like, for me, if I'm going to do it at all, it really has to be sustainable and achievable for me. So even though if I was going to cook it for a small dinner party of 6, I would do things like buy the ginger root and cut it myself. When it comes to soup night and the quantities needed.
Squeezed ginger is one of life's real benefits.
I buy the squeezed ginger.
Me
and I
too, because who doesn't want their ginger in a toothpaste
tube?
And
the thing is like, if I'm cooking for my family, I chop the garlic clove. But when I need like almost 3/4 of a cup of chopped garlic,
that's madness.
It's just get it out of there and fling it in, and there you go.
Where do you get what garlic do you use?
If it's chopped garlic, I really, really, really dislike pre-chopped garlic.
Yeah, me too. But I buy those black bags of the cloves that are peeled.
Those are good, but because those have a garlic flavor. But the chopped,
they're garlic cloves.
Yeah, but the chopped ones
take on.
The chopped ones have something else.
You know, it's like mixes like Bisquick has that metallic taste in the back of it that you always know it was there.
Yeah. But anyway, what I'm saying is, I actually the Costco brand big jars of pre-chopped garlic, they are fine for things like, something where it's not.
I don't like those because they make your fridge smell like garlic.
Well, there's that. But anyway, I'm just saying, there are Rach, this is even a bad confession. Now that I'm telling everyone about the way I cook at soup night, celery, I even buy the packs of celery sticks that are like, already cut and trimmed.
Yeah, but I'm
because I am so having to be in a rush on Tuesday nights that like having to wash, because celery can be really dirty. It's like having to wash it and string it and
I don't feel like that's weird. We've already said before that bags of frozen chopped onions are your friend. Also, weirdly, the frozen chopped onions, when they thaw in the bottom of a pan, they get to that transparent state much faster.
But see, okay, so for instance, if I was going to do a recipe that called for and this would be a normal quantity for me, would be like chop 8 onions and 2 heads of celery and half a cup of garlic. That is a lot of time chopping that on a Tuesday night I don't have. So anyway, I cut the corners and I cut out a lot of the middleman.
I have done it when I use matchstick carrots thrown in things, because especially if I'm going to do an immersion blender going on in there,
sure.
Then I'm like,
but I think that some of those little stringy carrots,
Yeah.
It's not matchstick. Are those?
Yeah,
it's not
they
a
are matchstick.
Like the kind you might throw into a coleslaw. Those are really actually kind of a fun texture in soups. I don't mind those at all. But anyhow, what I'm trying to say is that the chicken tikka that I made last night no doubt is not even remotely the proper procedure for doing it. However, I made the sauce. I made the garam masala myself because it just is helpful. Anyway, the store where I was shopping doesn't even carry garam masala, so I just mixed that all up and threw it all in with the onions and everything, and then
Can I just say, do you make this regularly?
Medium. Why?
Because if you go to the Fun Mart, they have garam masala in a cardboard box. It's like the size of a Bisquick mix. It is monster huge and it is cheap.
Okay.
And I bought it there
tip.
one time, and then I just had garam masala just everywhere. I didn't need that much.
Yeah,
so.
and I didn't I needed like 3/4 of a cup of garam masala.
Yeah, but this is the way you should do it because it's cheaper than putting the other spices together. It's very cheap.
But anyhow, so that's a hot tip for later. But I cooked all the chicken breasts which I cut down to about 1/3 of a chicken breast in the sauce, and I just let it simmer until it was kind of soft. And then I just grabbed the potato masher, and when the potato masher in that sauce shreds it beautifully. Like, it was very funny.
Isn't your pot like full?
Well, because it was going to go over rice, it was only about half full.
Oh, okay. Because I was trying to picture you plunging your whole arm down into
I have an industrial-sized potato masher.
Oh, that's right, you do. I saw that one.
It works in the big pot, and if you make a large amount of potatoes, buy yourself one. You'll never look back. It's really good.
So now we've given a lot of large-scale food counsel to everyone. Apropos of nothing, or maybe I'll tell you because you're getting ready for the holidays.
Like it. It's like, everyone pull up your socks and buy a huge box of garam masala and an industrial rice cooker and an industrial potato masher
and an 8-gallon pot, and don't you stop until you've made something in that. According to no rules at all, just follow your instincts, and wherever they go, there all your guests will be too.
To thine own self be true.
Oh man.
Oh gosh.
But I will say that coming up on Christmas reminds me of the fact that I did finally, well, like a couple of years ago, but finally tapped into the secrets of
I'm passing in your driveway. I'm not used to coming out
of the
of
potato, like a gratin or whatever, the scalloped potatoes that I made for Christmas. And I have to say that I bought the clear glass pans for them, and I buy nice cheese that costs us all our life. This is only for Christmas. We buy the cheese that costs us too much. But if you buy yourself, like I have told you before this time, buy yourself the potatoes one by one that were made for the right peeling dimensions and that will fit down the chute of your food processor. Because I buy the potatoes that look like they were made from my food processor chute.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I peel them and put them down in there, and if you put them immediately into a big pot or a bowl of cold water to keep them from oxidizing and being weird, then you get all your potatoes peeled and sliced in. And then I drain the whole bowl, and then drain it well. You don't want that water all in there. And then I just pour cream over it, and like fresh thyme, and sometimes some nutmeg, and like a little bit of cayenne sometimes, and then salt and pepper, and then taste one of the potatoes. Like, I don't actually eat it, but bite it, like just see if it's safe, because potatoes are one of those things that can absorb a lot of salt and make it seem really bland. So you want it to be just a tiny bit saltier than you would, when you taste it, you want it to just be a tiny bit salty. Anyways, and pepper. And then I layer it in the pan, and you want all of those potatoes, you want the cream to come halfway up the side, which is why a glass pan is helpful. Because you can see that the cream is halfway up the side.
Yeah.
Then you top it with a delicious cheese that cost you your life at Safeway probably. and you can put butter on it if you go to, and then bake it that way. But I do those, if you make them even a day ahead of the important holiday, they reheat beautifully.
So bake them.
So you can bake them and put them in the fridge, you know, and you're somewhere else.
Yeah.
And that's really effective.
It is a good
tip. Still are talking about food.
We're still doing
but I
that.
make 3 big pans of that usually for the Christmas dinner. And that's just our family usually. It's not.
Yeah. Well, here's a way that we could make this seem intentional that we just did that. I've gotten actually from a number of different places people asking if we would talk about your relationship to food. Like, as a woman,
all right,
your relationship to food. Like, have you gotten this question? I
have,
gotten
but
it a few
but you reminded
places.
me that I got other questions too, but that I said, oh, bring that up.
Yeah. Oh, me too. And I think there's an important one. So everyone, stay tuned for
why don't we just say buckle up for a quick fire question? Like
I was going to say, no, like just stay buckled up for another day. We'll talk about relationship to food.
Why don't, oh, for that one?
Let's just
Did
talk
you
about
not
this.
want to talk about that?
No, I'm bored of it now. We talked about food already too much. What if we hold that thought, but there was a really good question about Facebook groups.
Oh, okay.
Let's
do these really quickly because
all right.
the question that I meant to bring up, there were 2 different ones. One of them was about what if. Okay. Which one do you want to talk about first? Yours?
Sure.
That one? You
hold your thought.
Pose the question like you're someone else.
So the question, like I'm someone else.
Pretend. Do a different voice.
I'm going to pretend my name is Tina. The question.
This one, I know which question you're going to bring up because you were talking about, I was going to say this connects to our other most frequently brought up questions. Go ahead.
Which is what?
I shouldn't have interrupted you. Just say
we're really getting meta right now.
Yeah, the problem is that we both know what we're talking about, so that's
no
not
one
helpful.
else does.
Just say it briefly.
So the idea is, what about these Facebook groups where women get together and they share things about, their relationship with their husband, or it might be just kind of like private things about your relationship with your husband. They get shared and advice gets asked among other women, and it might not be a Facebook group. Maybe it's your book group, maybe it's your Bible study, maybe it's your prayer partners, maybe it's your sisters, whatever it is. How much do you allow that traffic between something that's private?
It's sort of like, I feel like if the group is a specific group, then they've marked themselves off with, this is like our belief system, this is our values, this is our whatever. And it sort of is a way of trying to create like a locker room.
Yeah.
Where you choose which locker room you wanted to be in, but when you're in there, we expect you to not have your clothes on, pretty much. By the time you get in there, we expect to all know everything about you. Now, the place that
That's a very uncomfortable metaphor, but it is so true.
But it's accurate, and the reason I say this is because it very often pairs with Christian ideals. So what you have is like a Facebook group that's saying on the surface, we want to help each other have strong marriages. Yeah. Right? Like, we're here because we want to encourage you in your marriage. Or here is a group of a whole lot of Christian women who are all trying to conceive. Yeah. But now, because we're saying we're in a trying to conceive group, we're letting it all rip about things that we should not be doing. And the point there is not that you're not, our criticism would not be around the ideals that the group proclaims.
Right.
Which is, the statement of faith by the door. But rather, do you need to be in that locker room at all? Or
should you be behaving that way in that locker room?
Right, and I think part of this question that came up anyways that we both saw, which is why we're talking about it, is that the question is from a husband who's like, not sure how he feels about his wife being in areas on the internet where for him to see what was going on there would be inappropriate.
Yes.
Right? So where you have suddenly anyone's husband who picks up their phone is in there with the nitty gritty about your reproductive cues. Like, now we're all sharing that. Why are we sharing that? Yeah. Not sure. Can't say rightly why we're sharing that. And that's different from from fellowship. Like, I do want to be careful with that, because I'm not saying that everyone's always being foolish if they're talking about hoping to get pregnant. Or
but this could easily be like, what about conflict resolution with your husband? And then everybody's like, well, my husband and I had a great big fight because he said,
please pray for my husband who's being horrible right now.
Yeah, or whatever. And the thing is that there are certain things that really should be kept, the walls should be kept high around your relationship.
But both high and lower, because many people are more comfortable calling up all of the women on the internet to tell them how bad their husband was, and would never dream of calling their pastor to say, there's a problem happening, could you help us? And the reason is because they don't want to tell anyone who's actually close enough to hold them accountable and their husband. So if you actually are having a big problem and you call your pastor, well, your husband's gonna know that you were maybe inflating the narrative a touch.
Because when is your husband gonna get called into the Facebook group to give his half of the story?
No, and that's the thing, is that if women would rather, so when you say they're letting the walls be too low, they're also, it's like, it's just wrong. It's wrong.
Yeah.
Because it's not that it's wrong for someone to know that your husband was being a fiend. If he was, then someone should know, but it's not all the ladies of the greater Ohio area that believe that contraception is wrong. I mean, like, that's not the people to go to in this situation.
The thing is that it is true that if you are having a big scale issue in your marriage, then absolutely call the pastor. But if you are miffed about the budget that your husband set for how many lattes you can get per month,
back out of the internet entirely of that.
Just actually, the only people that should be privy to that dispute are you and your husband. End of story.
And if it makes its way to the elders, it's really about something else at this point. Yeah, it's about your,
And I'm not saying that could never become a part of a bigger narrative. Yeah. But if it's just a squabble fest that you're having, nobody, your children, your sister, your mother, or your pastor, or the women of the internet, nobody should get a piece of that.
This is, I just want to say, this is a human thing. This is important. And these are the sorts of truths that is really good to look at yourself honestly. It's like, take off your tinted glasses and just look at yourself for a moment and notice that, no, in fact, you are not tan. That's how... but my point here is that, triangling is very real. So triangling, when you, like they say in an affair, that a lot of the time when the spouse finds out, the affair is over. Not because the spouse put an end to it, but because it always was about the spouse in the first place. It always was about this dysfunctional relationship, not about...
So what do you mean by triangling?
Triangling meaning that it's not a separate love affair between these two people. It's actually all about the marriage. It's it's not like, it's not like just accidentally this person fell in love twice. It's like one time they fell in love and one time they committed major betrayal. right? Like, they were different things happening. Mm-hmm. And of course, this is not like a universal rule or
it's just
anything.
Sure.
Right. But what I was going to say is a commitment to not blab your petty squabbles is a commitment to not have them, because there is no pleasure in having it privately. If your husband is like, I'd like you to cut back on the coffee budget, and you're like, well, I never. Like, and then you start texting friends with eye-rolling gifs and things.
Yeah.
And if he knew how tired I was. And if all of that. Well, the pleasure, the thing is that you're actually just indulging a pleasure somewhere else that is not. But if your commitment is to keep such conflicts of opinions handled in a decent and orderly way, well, then there's actually no fun to be had in inflating it, dramatizing it,
and if I could just
bombing it around for another 6 weeks. It's no fun. Why would you do that?
But the commitment to not drag other people into the fuss means don't do it in front of the children. And if you need to step into the other room and chat, do it. Mm-hmm. But don't have a festival with your husband.
Don't make a big thing
in the car with all your kids there. And especially, don't use your kids as pawns in a dispute with your spouse. And on this one, I actually don't care how big the problem is, because it's almost,
because
it's so much worse.
Even if your situation has ended in awful, sad
divorce,
you should not be using your children as things that you can tear back and forth from each other.
And to use your kids as the, basically use the kid as the rock you throw at your husband.
Yeah, don't do it.
It's so devastating to the children. And it's like, they should just see you and your husband as a united front that gets along great. And they they should not be privy to whatever the troubles are that you're having. And it's like, there's never going to be a marriage where there's no difference of opinion at any point. But just keep it decently under wraps,
and let's say decently under wraps / take it to the appropriate authorities. There is not a time when your children are the appropriate authorities in your marriage. Not. So if there is genuinely a problem, who actually has to answer to God for you? And it is the elders and your pastor. Yep. And do you want them having no clue what dark deeds you've been up to? Really, when you need help, get it from the appropriate
But the truth
person.
is if you are committed to dealing with the little things when they're little in the right way, chances are high.
Off an awful lot of
chances are high that you're never going to be a catastrophe.
Because it's true that enormous storm clouds come about from little bits of evaporation here and there, right? So there are ways of trimming down the contributors to the big fights.
Yeah.
Okay, but I want to move. We got to hustle into the next question.
Okay, we got another one.
This is one that we get asked all the time, and we almost never really answer it.
I have no idea what it's going to be.
It really pairs with this issue of Facebook groups, and a specific kind of Facebook group, which is often around what I was going to say is these women's kind of locker rooms, that I think women are buying into modern stupid thought that acts like your fertility, your pregnancy, your birth, that those things are women's only issues.
Oh man, I hate that.
And one of the questions that we get asked all the time is, how should we know when it's time to be done having kids? What kind of birth? Like, we frequently get asked about birth control, and and we almost never. We sometimes just respond briefly about it, but we don't really talk about it. And what I wanted to say is, one of the main reasons that we don't talk about it, even though I think it would be easy for us to give...
We could talk about principles,
guidelines, things that we believe.
Right.
The main reason that we don't talk about it is because we don't actually think that your decision to have children, or to not have more children,
or to space
your children, or to desire more children, we don't think that should be our decision to influence in your life, right? So we could talk about principles that we think are godly principles, which there's a number of those, and we can talk about those in a second. But what I meant is that we don't think that it's our job to lead a bunch of women to think differently about how many kids they should have, because those women have husbands.
Yeah.
And those women should be following their husbands. And if your husband wants you to do something that is sinful, like abortifacient, birth control, or the morning after pill, that's an example where you need to get on it with calling your pastor. You need help, and you should absolutely refuse to obey.
But also,
that.
if I could just say, talking about the principles is important in that a woman ought to know what she thinks about abortifacients. And so we would be very comfortable talking about that. Yeah. But in terms of
I think the stuff that I mean is that a lot of the time women have somehow commandeered this whole area in their marriages where women are by themselves trying to make the decision of what they believe they should do.
But there's a big
and that's
piece of
weird.
It. Yeah, there's a big piece of it that feels like because the husband isn't the one undergoing it, he doesn't understand.
It's not his body. And that's the thing you say, yes, it is, because don't you understand what the Bible says?
Yep.
Your body is his body.
And
which means
child,
that there is no, it's his child. Yeah. There is, if you're married, there is no time when you say, my body, my choice. Nope. It's our body, right? And even then, not always our choice. So that the whole thing kind of goes by the wayside because...
But this goes down to even things like, should we have a home birth or a hospital birth?
Yeah, it's not a women's issue.
You know
it's
what?
a couple's decision.
Yeah, and if your husband has an opinion on this, it is absolutely your job to care about what that is.
And actually, and to let him set the tone. And of course we think that a godly husband should care what his wife thinks. Or if he is wanting to recklessly endanger them somehow, she should get help. Or if, of course there's just a wide swath of perfectly acceptable Christian behavior in which swath you need to be following your husband, and you need to be gladly following your husband.
And you need to follow him even if...
No matter if the ladies on the internet think he's being a darn fool.
Or the ladies in your church, or the ladies in your family, or whatever it is. And it is very easy for women to gallop off and join a bunch of groups and get all the opinions.
Well, and then to come away with some pretty, let's just all remember that women are even called out in the scriptures as being gullible. So let's just say that's a thing, right? That's a real thing that women, the fact that there are large groups of women on the internet encouraging one another to eat their placentas is enough to tell you that you can't trust the world on these things.
You can't trust the men either, I would like to point out.
But the men, as far as I know, don't do things like that. They do weird things.
There's weirdos.
But I don't know of many intense support groups like that men... no doubt.
I think there are.
Probably starts to get real weird real fast.
Yeah, that's true. But I just think it's...
I'll just pretend I didn't ask that. I don't want to know what the men are doing when it's weird on the internet. Please don't tell me. Don't link me up to strange pipe smokers and things that they're...
I just think it's really, really important to remember that this is you and your husband. This is not you and the women who make the choices about your family. And
I actually think a lot of the time men will defer to their wives, when it's should we? And so then there is a really big decision that women feel like they have to make by themselves. And I think it is important to just not, however you got into that situation, it's not yours. It is his responsibility on that. And I will say, as far as principles about birth control, the principles we would abide by are that children are a blessing, period. This is something that we have. Obviously, we are pro-life all the way to the back teeth, that there is no time when you can make that decision, that if there is a child, God wanted the child.
Yeah.
That's how it is. It's not a choice in that way. And we would be against abortifacient birth control. If and when we do something, we were talking once, I don't even know when, talking to the OB about, whatever he was telling us about the procedure to have your tubes tied. I can't remember what it's even called. They put a little screw in the ends of your tubes, and then the scar tissue blocks. It's a way to have your tubes tied.
Okay.
And but we were like, so can you, like, is it possible for you to get pregnant with a baby that can't implant because you did that? Like,
Sure.
is that possible? He was like, well, I mean, I guess it is possible. And we're like, so even if and when we get to that time when we're ready to say no more children, our decision is going to be made based on the future health of the next child. One that we're, so like, we would not do something that would, even if you're hoping to not have another baby, we would not do something that would make the womb hostile.
Potentially harm. Yeah.
Right. And so we're just not, that's just.
But I would also say neither do we think that it is a Christian duty to undertake having as many children as you humanly possibly can crank out. We do think quality is an important.
Well, I think quality in the sense of that you're actually doing your duty by your children, that you're educating them in the Lord, that you're taking care of them, that you're disciplining them,
and you have
that
to
they
make
are well loved,
reasonable choices, because we live in a world where you always have to make reasonable choices, and so we don't think that it's like run for the border as fast as you can and have as many children as possible.
But I do think that we live in a world of
it airs
weenies.
On the other side.
We live in a world of crazy weenies about having children. Luke and I were just talking about this the other night. We were like, we
live in a world of weenies about every subject.
Yeah, but about having children, we've really gone to seed on that one. But Luke and I were laughing last night. The thing about the abortion debate, which is just so stupid, is that in a Christian worldview, like, well, we've solved the problem. Like, you're like, you already vowed till death do us part. Like, the scope of your commitments is already big enough to hold the entire life of a child inside of it without committing you to anything else.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean? Like, we already have a commitment area of life that is big enough to accommodate many, right?
Yeah.
Like, we can do that. But the thing that's so funny is when everybody acts like we absolutely must be able to have sex whenever we want to, and we absolutely must not ever have to have the commitment, with the commitment of having a child. And anytime I saw some leftist tweeting, like, having a hilarious angry fest of, like, the thing, if you want to make children just a women's issue, it's like, where are the dads? We need the dads to be long-term committed to the financial support. It was this hilarious lady freaking out, tweeting all these tweets, and someone's like, congrats, you've just invented marriage. Where the duties will be shared by the husband. What about a world where the husband is there to hold the child in the night? You're like, it's actually one of the things that's been done for kind of a long time.
The humans thought of that one before now.
Yeah, and I think I've said this a lot, but I do think that you don't ever, like, when you do make a decision like, Lord, we think that this is our house full. Like, we think that we have been fruitful. We have multiplied. We barely have our nose above water in our frantic doggy paddling around trying to do this well and in a way that glorifies you. We think we're done. I think that the most important thing in this decision is the posture that you have, which is a posture of inquiring of the Lord what would please him and being willing for him to answer you with something that didn't necessarily please you.
But also, if I could say, be willing to have him answer you through
your husband. And that's what I would say when I say I think it's harder. My guess is more women have a hard time thinking of getting pregnant when they didn't want to get pregnant. Like, that is because culturally we have a heavy emphasis on the grievance of an unwanted pregnancy. Like, that's putting so much upon you and your body and all of this. Yeah. But I think in Christian circles, it's very more likely that we have women who don't want to let go of having babies. And you can find very, very fierce support for that in these random women's groups. And the thing is if your husband is like, you know what? I think we're done here. Then you need to take that, like, thank you, Lord, for clearly giving me your will for me through my husband, even if he is being sinful, even if he is not necessarily
and if he is
making a wise decision.
That's the kind of thing.
It's what he's going to answer for.
Maybe you will need to get your pastor involved if there's some big
if
there's some big picture stuff going on there. But if both of you are on the same page, you're both trusting the Lord, and your husband is like, okay, here's what I think we're gonna do. Your job is to hear that as God's answer to your prayer, to make it clear.
Mm-hmm. And I think one back in when we had 5, we were just not sure. We were like, are we done? Maybe we're supposed to be done. We weren't sure. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. After the twins, when it was 4, we knew that we had no rational perspective from which to look at the situation. And we also knew that we were young and we might feel differently. You know, it was kind of like, this is crazy, but we don't know what life will be like. But after 5, it was like, well, are we done? That's a lot of kids. You know, it was like, that's a lot. I don't know. What do you think? Neither of us felt really strongly either way, but we thought, like, well, this is a real house full. Like, this is a lot of people. Like, maybe we should be done. So our approach on that was to pray. And when I said, I think the most important thing is your posture, I really found in that we decided just to give it a month and assume that we would be done having kids at the end. Like, we're like, we'll give it a month of just praying about it. And if I am not pregnant at the end of that month, we will have heard from the Lord that we can be done. We should be done. And anyways, I found at that time that it's actually a very hard thing to be willing either direction is actually very hard. To be actually trying to pray very open-handedly, like, I'm willing to be done at 5 or I'm willing to be pregnant right now. That turns out that's a real teeter-totter of emotions. But anyways, that was then we have Shadrach. That happened. And then the funny thing is that it was actually that was with Blair. That was with number 5, I think. Either way, by the time we got to Moses, we weren't even, it was not prayerful. Nothing was, we weren't. And my point is, the situation changed enough. Yeah. That it wasn't even, we have 7. Like, that was our 5th that we were concerned about. Maybe we should be done, and now we have 7. Yep. But my real point is, follow your husband and not go get into support groups of ladies saying, hey, everyone, tell me your convictions about this and lead me. And then getting with all the strength of other women, like, building you up to be stubborn and obstinate to your husband. Yeah. About, like, no, you don't understand. The ladies are really supporting my position on this.
And of course, none of this should be taken to say you shouldn't have an opinion and you shouldn't have an informed opinion.
Or that you're not allowed to talk to other women about things.
Yeah, because of course, like, just getting insight or talking to other ladies, but just resist the temptation to overshare and invite a lot of other people into your marriage where they really don't belong. And where that's the other thing, is that these random internet people have no vested interest in what happens to you after you take their advice.
No, and we had a really, I can remember one time years ago when there was with a group of friends, I was with a group of friends, and somebody said, how often are you all having sex? And it went real quiet, where everyone was like, this is not our normal speed of conversation. Right. Like, I think it was just like, this is not what we usually talk about. This is not this was not the tone of this friendship. This was definitely a much more personal question than any of us were talking about. And it was definitely a unique moment. But I think that we actually all understood in that moment that this was a genuine need, that we need to talk about this in a God-honoring way. Someone needs help right now, right? You know what I mean? It was like, and we knew them, and like, this is,
Yeah.
A friend in real life asking other Christian women that she knows love the Lord and want to, and so what I'm saying is not that it's always inappropriate to have that kind of a moment where you're like, listen, I need somebody to just fill me in on a detail here. But what I'm saying is that should not be the overarching tone of your life, is
or the basis
rushing
of
into
the friendship.
Right, like, I'm here, I want to talk about your sex life. Or
Right.
I'm here, tell me about your fertility. How are you working on it?
Yeah.
So, all that to say, mind your own P's and Q's.
And your own husbands.
Yeah, that too. Just keep things where they ought to be in their proper spheres.
Yeah.
And also, I just, that's the thing about, it's Proverbs 31, isn't it? Or is it? It is Proverbs 31. But it's like that the heart of her husband safely trusts in her. And that it's not like your husband is really fearful of what you might have said about him on the internet.
No.
Or what.
And this is another one of those golden rule moments, because how would you love it if he told all of his friends
my
about...
word. We do this a lot, this switchy the roles.
Yeah.
But can you imagine if you picked up your husband's phone and you found that he was in a support group saying, guys, what do you do if you just are not attracted to your wife? And when you see her in the evenings in her yoga pants, you just aren't in the mood. But guys,
he's doing this
she's put on some weight lately, and that just really, can you even?
Especially if it was his pipe smoking group. Or
yes! And you're like, well... or what about if it was men being faithful to their wives group? Where honestly the goal was...
Or a bunch of men in the church that he said that to.
Yes! Like he said, guys,
imagine it.
She's putting on weight and I'm really not attracted anymore.
I wish she would brush her teeth more
What do you
often.
recommend? What do you recommend for me to get over how I'm not attracted to her?
Gosh.
The thing is that would be so horrifying, and yet how many women talk to all their other women friends about how they're not in the mood when they see their husband. They're not in the mood and looking for consultants, because when I see when my husband wants to, go to Minnesota, I don't want to go.
You're like, let's workshop this, ladies.
Give me your feedback, and we'll check in tomorrow and see how your advice worked. Here's what I have to say. Inappropriate.
Stop.
Inappropriate.
Stop.
Knock it off. Knock it off. And sometimes you just have to say, the Bible actually touches on all these issues. It just touches on it in a real frank, unsentimental way, which is essentially, you're not your own. Like, get over yourself.
Yep. Yep.
Move along. Yeah. All right. Well, we've said it all now.
We touched a number of bases here.
From pots full of roast and large scale potato mashers.
I know.
To everything that's wrong with the internet.
We didn't talk about our relationship towards food with food. We'll have to get that another time.
Join us in our internet support group to talk about that. All right. Till next time.
Bye.